let's switch gears for a second. Pras of the Fugees recently got found guilty of money laundering, political conspiracy, a whole bunch of stuff. Are you familiar with this case at all?
No.
Okay.
No.
So let me kind of fill you in. And as I'm telling this to you, you might actually remember some of the, some of the things might sound familiar to you. So Pras was in a group called the Fugees. They went multi-platinum, back in the 90s. The group broke up. He went on his own. He hooked up with this guy from Malaysia named Joe Low. This is the same guy that financed the Wolf of Wall Street movie.
Okay.
And this guy, Joe Low, stole $4 billion from the Malaysian government. And he spent that money partying his ass off.
Okay.
Hundreds of millions of dollars was thrown all around.
I remember this, yeah.
You remember this, right? Like he gave Leonardo DiCaprio a Picasso as a payment. And I interviewed Jordan Belfort and we talked, he was, he knew about this whole thing, after it happened and everything else like that. And he was funneling money to Pras. He was giving him literally hundreds of millions of dollars. First, he wanted a photo with Obama. The Obama administration didn't want to do the photo. He eventually got a photo at a Christmas party, and he was basically using money to try to get his charges thrown out. And he was also trying to basically get this Chinese guy back into China that had a bunch of charges in order to, gain favor from the Chinese government. Ultimately, everyone was busted. Now, Joe Low is in hiding somewhere. So he was supposed to be in court.
Right?
He's a fugitive. So you're familiar with the story.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, Pras actually ended up in court. And I remember I spoke to him last year about the situation. And what he was telling me was that he's not going to do any prison time, but they're trying to take all the money and it's just a negotiation of how much money he can keep afterwards. But he's like, oh, I'm not going to prison. It's fine. It's just a matter of how much money I can keep. But he was broke at the time. He wanted to borrow some money for legal fees. And I'm like, nah, I'm good. I don't anticipate this money ever coming back to me. So I said, I'm good. The crazy part was that from what I read, he actually had a plea deal on the table where most of the money was going to get returned. But he turned down the plea deal, at which point he triggered a superseding federal indictment with 10 criminal charges.
Mm-hmm.
He went to court, he took the stand, and he was found guilty on all charges. And he's now facing 20 years. Does this kind of sound a little bit familiar with your situation of money laundering and government trying to get their money back? And were you ever offered a deal to give all the money back and there was going to be no criminal charges?
No.
Okay, they weren't even talking about it.
With me, they wanted jail time, no doubt. I mean, there was no way to avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
No way to avoid it. I mean, they took a bunch of money from me, no question.
How much did they take?
Well, I had a $15 million fine and restitution. And then here's the untold story. Myself and my partner, Iriza, we had $33 million in a bank in Austria.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a number to count. He had half the number, I had half the number. When he became a witness against me, he became an informant, he didn't give up the money because I told his son, I said, listen, don't give up the money. That's $33 million. That's our money. I said, I'll fight your father in court. It's okay. But tell him, don't give up the money. So he didn't.
It's not really your money, though. It's stolen money, but.
Well, we'll get into that.
Okay.
So I earned it either way, whether it was whatever.
All right.
But he testifies against me in the Giuliani case.
Mm-hmm.
And I get acquitted. And we destroyed him on the stand. Destroyed him. So now he was going to go into the Eastern District of New York. He was the main witness testifying against me in the gas case. And after he got destroyed, he was damaged. So they were throwing him out of the witness protection program. So you're no good. Forget about it, right? Well, he now wants to go for broke. He tells him about the account in Austria, anything to ingratiate himself. So the feds actually go to Austria to try to get the money out of the account. Austria said, no, this is a numbered account. You bring us the entire number. So in my plea negotiation, I had to give it up. We ended up giving up that number. And they got the $33 million. So they got it. But I still had to get jail time. It could have been $133 million. They didn't care. They don't care about the money.
And how much jail time did you get for that case?
10 years.
10 years. I mean, this is a very interesting case because from what I understand, he could have avoided jail time.
Yeah, but you said they first were negotiating with him, and then they indicted him in the feds.
They offered him a plea deal that he did not accept.
Who offered him the deal?
The feds.
It was the feds.
I believe so, yeah. Because, listen, Joe Lowe, the Malaysian guy, was supposed to be on the stand with him. I mean, was supposed to be, in the indictment. He is in the indictment. He was supposed to show up to court.
Right.
But he's gone. He's hiding out in China from what people think. You know what I'm saying? Like, he stole a lot. I mean, $4 billion.
A lot of money.
But it really seems like he could have walked away from it, but he just got greedy. And at one point, he even, I guess, on the stand admitted that he approached the feds to admit to some of the things that were happening. So now everyone's calling him a federal informant and so forth. And he became kind of an unofficial informant for the feds.
Right.
So now there's that whole stigma that's haunting him. And it just seems crazy to me that he knew where that money was coming from. He knew that this was fraudulent. He was probably, he tried to say, oh, I didn't know, this was just a party guide. I didn't know where the money came from. I mean, people spending money on that regard and funneling hundreds of millions. Because, he pulled up to my house in the Rolls Royce Phantom and, talked about his multi-million-dollar watch collection and, lived in a nice, apartment in Beverly Hills.
So did he blow all the money?
I don't know. Maybe that was it. Maybe he just didn't have the money to give back. Because like I said, he was borrowing. He called me to borrow money.
Well, then that's probably.
And when I told him, I said, well, okay, do you want to give me your watches as collateral? He goes, well, I don't have them. Like I would just sell the watches. So I don't have any collateral. So he was just.
So that's probably why he couldn't take a plea. He didn't have the money.
He didn't have the money.
Because let me tell you, when the feds are offering you a deal with no jail time, you take it.
You take it.
Oh, yeah. Because they come back strong afterwards like you did.
Did you take the stand in your own case?
No.
And why is that?
Lawyers never want you to take the stand. Never. And depending upon, the only time you'll take the stand if the case is so strong against you and you're like, let me see if I can convince the jury.
So it's a Hail Mary.
Yeah, Hail Mary.
Right, because he took the stand in the case and, people were a little surprised. He said, well, I spoke to the universe and my legal team and I've decided to take the stand. And he got tore apart on the stand. And ultimately he was found guilty of every charge.
Yeah, it's you got to be good if you take the stand. And you got to be right. Otherwise, these lawyers are pretty good at tearing witnesses apart.